I'm BK Maginnis, your Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate. This is the next episode of my walking series where I walk and tell you a little more about my campaign and the issues that are important to me. So I've got my shoes on, walking shoes on. I hope you do too. So either head on outside, hop on that treadmill, or just watch me from your computer, do a little walking and talking. So let's go. So today we are going to talk about the big A word, abortion, and the concept of body liberty. Now, one of the things I want to go ahead and start off by saying is I understand people have their personal convictions, their religious beliefs, and I'm not trying to change anyone's opinion about those. I'm not trying to convince them that abortion is right or moral, but we live in a secular society, separation of church and state, and people's personal convictions and religious beliefs don't overrule everyone else's civil liberties. The other thing I want to kind of start with too is understanding the difference between freedom and liberty. Now, a lot of people use those terms interchangeably. You see them kind of used interchangeably in all the founding father documents. But there's actually a distinct difference between the two. So we actually don't have many freedoms in this country. Even though the things that are listed as freedoms, like freedom of speech, has its own limitations. Again, you can't just say whatever you want about somebody. You get sued for slander, right? So what we do have are liberties, though. And what liberties are the freedom to do what you want, as long as that doesn't impede on the freedoms of others. So it's freedom with limitation. So one of the reasons why I'm talking about abortion today is because it's been in the news quite a lot lately. A lot of focus on the Supreme Court. We had this past year Texas implement a abortion bill, anti-abortion bill, that basically made abortions after 6 weeks illegal. And the absurdity of that is some women don't even know they're pregnant by 6 weeks, unless they're trying. They can miss their period, maybe think of periods later, whatever else, and they wouldn't know it. Wouldn't have the opportunity to have an abortion if they wanted to. Also, and this, in our illegitimate Supreme Court, allowed that rule to go in place too. So that's something to be said again about that illicitly constructed illegitimate Supreme Court. That's for another day. Also, just the other day, Oklahoma passed a total abortion ban. And this is what's going on with these, is they're being sneaky about it. Is this one, they basically made it illegal to provide an abortion. So they're attacking the doctors and the healthcare providers who are going to do it. So they made it totally illegal, no matter when. So abortion's been in the news. So let's get this start off straight and say this: that people are not pro-life. They're anti-abortion. The reason why I say that is, if they're truly pro-life, they would not be voting Republican, because none of the measures that are really pro-life are supported by Republicans. And what I mean by that is, they're not supporting things to feed hungry children, help people in poverty. Republicans just the other day wouldn't vote for, putting a cap on insulin. They don't support a paid family leave so that people, if they're forced to have a child, they can stay home and take care of them. So all these measures that will be fundamentally pro-life for people who are actually living, and they don't support them. So they're not pro-life, they're anti-abortion. And so, it means one of two things. Either they're being incredibly dishonest and they understand what they're doing, or they've got a mental illness. They're just so obsessed with this one concept that they don't understand what the ramifications of getting rid of abortion would be, making abortion illegal. And actually that doesn't require an imagination to understand the ramifications of making abortion illegal, because it's happened before. In 1966, Romania outlawed abortion. Reason being is their communist leader at that point in time, Ceausescu, wanted to increase the population for labor purposes. So since abortion was the main contraception at that point in time, making it illegal was going to increase the population, and it did. The year after abortion was made illegal, the birth rate doubled, and it continued to go from there, and the population continued to increase. So population continued to increase, but an interesting thing happened. In early 80s, they started to get a huge spike in crime. Crime rate spiked. And the reason being is we had all this new they had all this new population, didn't have jobs for this new population. You could say that, maybe quite a bit of those children were unwanted, came to families that were poor to begin with, weren't prepared for children. So the crime rate spiked because, approximately 16, 17 years after abortion was made illegal. Now let's contrast that to the U.S. In the early 80s, Reagan wanted to get tough on crime, right? Tough on crime, because as the population had to continue to increase in the U.S., the total crime rate increased, including the violent crime rate increasing. So continue to increase with the population spike. So, federal government, state governments, local governments, prompted by Reagan, started flooding money into police force, increasing policing, right? Hoping that would have some type of effect on the crime rate. And it didn't really. It continued, total crime continued to increase. Violent crime continued to increase. Until actually 1991. 1991, it peaked. Both those numbers peaked, and they've actually been in decline ever since. So despite what's going on in the news and yada yada yada, we've actually been in a crime decline since 1991, both total and violent, which is the one that people care a whole lot about. And of course, Republicans wanted to claim that was, because of their war on crime, right? We poured all this money into the cops. See, look, it works. But that's not the reason why. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about abortion, right? Well, this is 1991. We hit a peak. Guess what happened in 1973, 18 years before that? Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade made abortion legal. And so here we are then 18 years later. Now the crime rate starts to drop, and it's dropped ever since because abortion was legal. So here we go. We've got a real world, we've got real world data. It's been studied. Romania gets rid of abortion. 16, 17 years later, crime increases. U.S. abortion is made legal. 18 years later, crime rate spikes, begins to drop when abortion is made legal. So we understand what the ramifications of getting rid of abortion are. And here's the thing, and again, this is where I say it's, again, mental illness, obsession, because they're not thinking about the ramifications of it. Everybody knows this. Women will still continue to have abortions, specifically women with means. It happened still. There's evidence to show that it still happened after abortion was made illegal in Romania. It happened before Roe v. Wade was implemented. What it just means is that more women specifically low-income women, will be put in a position to find other means, go to untrained hands in order to have procedures done, and mortality rates and complications will increase from there. So, again, we talk about them being pro-life, right? That's not really pro-life when you're essentially knowing that you're going to increase the mortality rate. So one of the things I learned a couple years back is that for a long time, Democrats or people who are pro-choice were arguing the wrong way about this issue. And what I mean by that is, if you're arguing with somebody about weeks or timeline or time frame, you've already lost the argument. Because it's not about when something is viable or something isn't. It's about a woman having a right to control her body. See, now Roe v. Wade, the decision for that and making abortion legal was based upon the Equal Protection Clause that is found in the 14th Amendment, which allows all citizens equal protection under the law. So basically what it was saying is women have the right to their bodies, to get abortion, right to their bodies, because men have that same right. So again, it's not about having the right to have an abortion. And this is where we as Democrats have had the wrong verbiage with this as well. It's not about the right to have an abortion. I know I've used the term abortion several times in this video, and that's because I'm using it as the procedure term. But it's not about the right to have an abortion. It's about women having the right to have control over their bodies. And so there's been several ways to describe this in the past. So we need to basically eliminate that the verbiage of abortion out of our verbiage, I guess. The word abortion out of our verbiage when talking about this. And there's been a couple different ways that it's been talked about to describe this. The term that's become popular or had been the term had been started being used more frequently now is body autonomy. Women have body autonomy, but of course conservatives ruined that here with COVID-19, the vaccine, because they started to try to appropriate that term for not getting a vaccine. I have body autonomy. You want to talk about body autonomy for women, you have body autonomy for vaccine. And I really shouldn't have to explain how absurd that concept is. We're talking about forcing a woman into a decision that will drastically alter her life versus, getting a harmless shot that's going to prevent you from infecting and possibly killing multiple people. And even to that case, when we talked about it, vaccines were never even mandated on a national scale. Now, sure, they were mandated for federal positions or contracts with the government, but in that case, people still had, if they didn't want to get it, they could go find another job. Again, we're talking about having to find another job versus forcing someone to alter the rest of their life. So there's really no comparison between those two. The term I'd like to settle on, it goes back to what I talked at the beginning, is what's known as body liberty, meaning people, specifically women in this case, should be allowed the freedom to do what they want with their body, as long as it's not impeding on somebody else. Use the term body liberty because, again, women should have the right to do what they want with their body as long as it doesn't harm other people, and that really eliminates the vaccine excuse. So body liberty is what I feel is the appropriate term for all this. So talking about this, when we talk about people being anti-abortion, if you are anybody but a white male, being anti-abortion is almost illogical. And here's the reason why. Again, that's why I talk about being almost like a mental illness, being illogical. The equal protection clause that was used to grant women the right to have an abortion or right to control over their body is the same clause that is used for multiple, basically all the civil rights that came, civil rights that have come since the 1960s. And that means, gay marriage based on the equal protection clause. The right for women to have access to contraception, equal protection clause. Interracial marriage, equal protection clause. Even the right for minorities to vote, even though that was guaranteed in the 15th Amendment, the equal protection clause is used extensively in cases to argue against gerrymandering, because it's saying that, and voter suppression, because it's basically saying that minorities are being excluded from their equal right to vote. So people who are not white males trying to argue anti-abortion, if they are able to get rid of Roe v. Wade, then that means all those other civil rights that have been guaranteed could be on the chopping block as well. And you think, oh, that's absurd. They couldn't take those things away. They're already planning on it. During the Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's hearing, Mike Braun, senator from Indiana, was interviewed, and he basically argued about that abortion should go back to being a state's decision. And then one of the reporters asked, and there's a video out there, you can see it, I'm not going to take my word for it, there's a video out there. Asked him, it's not even print, it's video. Asked him, does that apply to all these other things? And he said, yeah, absolutely. Interracial marriage, all these things should be decided upon the state. So they are already planning it at this point in time. So if you are anybody but a white male, specifically if you're African American or minority, you being anti-abortion might actually be you fighting for against the rights that you already have. So yeah, again, doesn't really make much sense. The final thing, and I meant to talk about this earlier, but when we talk about being pro-life, anti-abortion not really being pro-life, and we're talking about, well, it's about life, it's about saving lives or whatever else. Okay, well, if that's the case, then why don't we have 70,000 people die a year from a lack of organ transplanted and blood loss, lack of blood supply. 70,000 a year in the U.S. So, okay, why don't we have mandatory blood giving, right? Doesn't hurt anybody, or at least doesn't hurt, a majority of the people, 99% of the people could give blood every month and not be impacted. Why don't we have, if it's really about pro-life, why don't we have that mandatory? Why aren't we fighting for that? We can give up parts of our liver. We can give up a kidney, parts of our lungs. All these things while we're alive could save lives. Why don't we have legislation mandating that, right? Okay, why don't we do that? Even let's go farther than that. When we're dead, why isn't it mandatory for people to be organ donors if they're dead? They're dead. We're not even talking about someone who's alive and doesn't like needles, doesn't want to give blood, doesn't want to give up a kidney. You're dead. Why don't we have mandatory organ donation? Because if it's really about pro-life and all these things could save people's lives, then why aren't we fighting for just as much as the right for, why aren't they arguing for that just as much as they are trying to restrict a woman's body? And the reason why is because they're not pro-life. They're anti-abortion. And for whatever reason, they just feel like they got to control women, and they made an excuse up for it. I'm gonna end this video by talking about it, relating a story. And again, it's a kind of an absurdity story. And again, this just kind of goes back to where I think it's almost like an obsession or a mental illness, this whole anti-abortion craze. So several times a week, I drive my daughter to classes. And we pass by what I can only assume is a women's health clinic, because almost every day, almost every time I go by there, there are anti-abortion people out there. And the reason why I know there are anti-abortion people are out there, because there are these big billboard signs saying it, and they've got pictures of some mutilated carcass. They try to say it's 10 weeks, but anybody who knows anything about anything, and I'm not getting specifics, knows that's a lie. So they've got to lie about something to create fear. And they have these out there not thinking about all the parents driving their 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, whatever, their children by, who's going to have to ask those questions, look at that, maybe have nightmares, dreams. But again, hey, we're pro-life, right? We're pro-life, right? We're not worried about the people who are alive. We're worried about whatever. So remember I said that they're there almost every day, or almost every time I come by. Well, it just so happens that anytime it rains, they're not out there. So they've got this deep conviction. They want to, force women to make these life-altering changes to their body, but they can't be inconvenienced by a little rain. And so, funny thing is, one day there was actually fog out, and I said to myself, I was like, you know what? I bet you they're not even going to be out here for fog. And sure enough, they weren't out there for fog. So, I don't know if maybe they just think that procedures don't happen on rainy days, and I'm smiling. This is not funny, obviously, but joking. But maybe they don't think that procedures happen on rainy days, or whatever else. But that's how deep their conviction is. They can sit there and talk about their conviction, but they can't be inconvenienced by that conviction to go out there when there's a little precipitation. They're going to force women to have these life-altering decisions, and they can't be bothered to go out there in a little adverse weather for that. So, yeah. Anyway, that's the end of my video. It's a long one today. I'm BK Maginnis, your Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate. I'm going to keep walking here, and maybe get a little more walking, or maybe you're done. Take a little break. Great talk. Look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.